Good morning. I'm Kim Chappell, and I'm your worship associate today. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this progressive spiritual community where we come together to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and act for justice. At UUCL, as we like to refer to ourselves, love is our only doctrine, and service and justice are our most sacred prayers. So we pray by striving to live lives in words and deeds that affirm that Black lives matter. And our doctrine of love has moved us to affirm for decades that love is divine and love is what makes a family. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once too, seeking for something larger than ourselves to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. So whether it's your first time here with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find questions here that stretch you, people to befriend you, and progressive spiritual values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically. I now invite us to enter into sacred space as Reverend Israel lights our chalice, beloved symbol of our Unitarian Universalist movement. As we light our chalice today, let us savor the words of Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation.
Thank you, Kim. I am Reverend Israel. I use he, him for pronouns, and I'm the minister of this congregation. And it's my joy, my great pleasure this morning to welcome all of you to this, our virtual sacred space that we share. We are here, my friends, to lose ourselves in the beauty and the wonder and awe of this creation of ours, this fantastic and challenging and beautiful and painful and complex world that we all live in. We are here to discover the joy of what it means to be alive, what it means to struggle, to live, and to make sense of this world as people. Today, we are continuing our exploration of joy. That is our monthly theme for, what is it? It is December, for the month of December. The theme of the month is opening to joy at this time of year, this darkest time of year when we open ourselves to the joy and the light and the delight that is all around us and is always opening up for us to witness, to pay attention to notice. The opening words that I have for us this morning come from Brene Brown. And she speaks of joy, and she says of joy that it comes to us in moments, often ordinary moments. Sometimes we miss out on the bursts of joy because we're too busy chasing down extraordinary moments. Other times we're so afraid of the dark that we don't dare let ourselves enjoy the light. So my friends, we are here this morning to discover the joy in ordinary moments, and to discover that we must always strive to open ourselves up to enjoy the light, to wake up, to pay attention, to look and to listen and to feel and to experience all that this challenging world is calling us to do.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
We wake ourselves together, my friends. We call ourselves to the beauty and the pain and the struggle and the joy and the resistance and the sorrow and the complexity of life, of what it means to be human. We find joys and sorrows in each moment that we open to all that is going on around us. And we carry them with us throughout life, sometimes at the same time. Sometimes one outshines the other a little bit more at any particular moment. And as people, we are not meant to carry these things, to experience these things, to make sense of these things alone. So we need a place to lay down our burdens, to wash ourselves, to immerse ourselves in the warm, clear, and refreshing waters of community, to fill our cups when they become empty, and to raise a glass in celebration when we have something to celebrate, which is life itself. So I invite you to examine yourself, your heart, your life this morning, our life, our lives together, and to examine what is on your heart. Is it weighing down? Is it heavy with burdens? As if you are carrying a large pack of stones? Is it light and buoyant, crystal clear and bright, or muddy and complex? well, now is your time to bring those things to our space. And if you have something that is on your heart that you wish you must share, something that is a part of your story that you wish to share with this congregation, now is your time to name it, to call it into this space so that we can help you, rejoice with you, be with you. For all that we carry, for all that you carry, for all the joys, sorrows, and complex truths, the ones that words cannot express, the ones that are still emerging, for all of who we are and all of what we carry, I place this final stone in our well so that you know that you are loved and seen and held by this community of care. The complexity of what it means to be alive today. We take a moment to turn to ourselves and to turn to the world, to open our hearts to it and to each other. Our meditation today is a poem by Mary Oliver. And it is entitled "When I Am Among the Trees." And I chose it because this life of ours is like a walk through the forest, a walk that is filled with gladness and joy, and also sadness and pain. And it is on this walk that we discovered that we are invited to stay a while and to reflect on all that life brings. When I am among the trees. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches and they call again. It's simple, they say. And you too have come into this world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine.
And when I rise, let me rise like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall like a leaf, gracefully, without regret. And when I stand, let me stand like a tree, strong and tall. And when I lie, let me lie like a lake, peacefully, calm and still. And when I work, let me work like a bee, wholeheartedly. And when I play, let me play like a breeze, fresh and cool, light and clear.
Lessons from nature on what it means to be human. We continue this exploration of joy. And I want to say that when we speak of joy today, and perhaps always, I speak of not the great joy of what it means to be effusive and explode with passion and excitement and happiness and gladness for some great thing that you received, or God, or revelation, or something like that, like winning a grand prize, or discovering a great thing, or getting some great surprise thing like that. When I speak of the everyday, ordinary, mundane joy, to walk on this earth and to live with gratitude for life, for what it means to be alive, for this gift that we are all given, perhaps by chance, but we are given it, or we are at least experiencing it, for this gift of what it means to be alive, and to have the chance to feel sunlight on our face, to look at another person, to experience love, to experience pain, to see each moment as a unique and precious gift, to see each moment as something that you will never be able to experience again. To realize that as we are living in each moment, we are literally witnessing the future being born, and we are active participants in it. It's pretty cool to think about the passage of time that way, that we are participants in the future being born in every moment, that things are never static, that they are always becoming, that we are always becoming. And we may not always be able to control all of it, but we can control how we respond to the world. We can control how we orient ourselves to the world. That's what it means to discover everyday joy. Because that big joy with a capital J, the kind that excites us and makes us want to do a dance and jump and sing, that's a joy that flows in and out of our lives. And for some of us, it can be much more present than for others. So for everyday joy, it's something that we have to look for and we have to notice. We have to take the time to orient ourselves to it and wake up to it. This is the season of Advent in the Christian calendar, which really, if you look further back at the tradition of embracing light at the darkest time of year, is not a uniquely Christian thing. But the season of Advent, at least, of some of the language, the symbols around it are uniquely Christian. And in the Christian calendar, they call this time of year Advent, and we're in the third Sunday in that ritual observance, which is the preparation for Christians of the birth of Jesus, for the arrival of someone who will come and bring light and joy and peace and hope to the world. On this third Sunday in the Advent observance, one of the ways that it's observed is by lighting a wreath with candles on it. And the third Sunday, there's 4 candles in the wreath, and the third Sunday you light the pink candle on the third Sunday, which is this Sunday. And that candle stands for Gaudete, which means rejoice, rejoicing, or sometimes it's just called Joyful Sunday by Christians. And this is a moment in that observance for joy in waiting, for anticipating something that is about to happen, that is getting near, that is getting people excited. And the celebration of Advent is about anticipation and waiting for that light, for that saving grace, so to speak, to come. Now, if we are to observe this from a humanist perspective and outside of the Christian tradition, although many of us have connections to it, and we certainly live in a culture that is difficult to separate from it, we can't avoid it. It is all around us, and it is part of many of your spiritual practices, perhaps. I want to reflect upon what it means to be waiting for joy, when joy perhaps is already all around us to be discovered in the mundane and the everyday. A story that comes to mind for me is I remember when I was about 8 or 9 years old or something like that. My grandpa, I remember, had a heart attack. You know, one of those moments in life where the fragility of life is so much in the forefront of our minds. When our own mortality comes to mind, when something like that happens to a person, and for those around them as well, perhaps. And I remember going to visit my grandpa in the hospital, and he was quite a storyteller as a person, but he was also usually very joyful and happy and a jokester, or he could be kind of a grump too sometimes, but complex person just like many of us. And I remember visiting him in the hospital, and he was sitting there kind of waxing philosophical that day, sitting in his hospital bed and reflecting on his life and thinking about how his life was a series of moments of anticipation or waiting for something to come to happen, for the next stage to arrive. You know, I remember him telling me that, you know, when he was a kid, he couldn't wait to be able to drive, and then it was he couldn't wait to be done with school, and then it was he couldn't wait to get married, and he couldn't wait to have a kid, and couldn't wait to find the right job or get a different job, or he couldn't wait to go on vacation at the end of the year, and then it was he couldn't wait to retire. And he realized that he felt like he had spent his whole life waiting for something to happen, waiting for the next stage, waiting for something that was going to happen that was going to make his life so much better. And there he was at 82, sitting in a hospital bed, confronting his own mortality and the fact that there might not be so much more waiting left. That was a profound moment for me to experience at such a young age, and it really stuck with me for my life. It was, and it brings to mind a quote from the author Annie Dillard, who reminds us that how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And I think my grandpa taught me that in that moment. Not to spend my life in waiting for something that will arrive, waiting for joy or for salvation to come, waiting for something to make me happy when I'm not content. Maybe right now it's hard to think of the idea of joy because you have something challenging, difficult, painful, deeply painful going on in your life. Or maybe you look around at the world and see how much pain and suffering there is in it, and find the idea of joy absurd at this time of year, during a pandemic that is still going on. Maybe we find it hard to think about joy right now, perhaps when we are waiting for the pandemic to end, waiting for this building to open back up so we can be physically in each other's presence, waiting for things to get back to normal, waiting for the next stage to come, waiting for someone or something or to happen or come. And we forget to remember that how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. That we are always in process. That we have this incredible gift of the present moment. To be active participants in the world that is being created, not just waiting for it to be created. Not waiting for the light of the world to arrive, but being it. It's like trying to find joy when you're in the waiting room at a dentist's office. Trying to find joy in the waiting room at a dentist's office, maybe even waiting for a root canal procedure. Finding the ordinary joy in that moment, perhaps sitting in the waiting room, appreciating the fact that many chairs and waiting rooms are part of a lineage of furniture design that a lot of thought went into. Somebody put their passion and soul into designing that chair you were sitting in that moment. Appreciating the care that went into that. Maybe your dentist's office has a fish tank in it, and you can see the dance of life in the water in front of you. I know my dentist's office has some amazing artwork on the wall, and some of it is from the part of Italy where my family is from, and I really enjoy looking at it every time. It reminds me of home in some ways, even though I didn't grow up there. Struggling, my friends, to orient ourselves to life and to joy in the face of our own mortality, of our own death, of suffering that exists. It's a challenging thing to do, but it also is a liberating thing to do. Let me put it this way. If you are to think for a moment, think perhaps to your future, a future that we all share, to the moment that you are lying in a bed and you know that this could be one of your final days lying in a bed, that you are dying. To think to that moment and what you may be wishing for and struggling for in that moment. And to think of how incredibly powerful it would be, how incredibly joyful and grateful you might be, or maybe if someone were to tell you that you had one extra day to get up and walk around. And so even if you are in that bed and you are struggling and in pain, to think that someone were to give you one more day without pain to get up and walk around and do some mundane things such as experience sunshine, sunlight on your face, to experience the joy of putting on your own shirt, of feeling warm water splashing on your face, standing and walking, drinking a glass of water, of getting to spend one more day with someone you love. Well, my friends, we are all, in a sense, we are all literally dying. And each day of your life is someone giving you that for one more day. And that's ordinary joy, my friends. To live your life knowing that that is true. Dr. Willie James Jennings, who's a theologian at Yale Divinity School, says that joy is an act of resistance. Resistance to death and despair and all its forces. And this is all forms of death, not just literal death, but all the ways that life would be closed up, made less joyful and less meaningful. All the ways that we close ourselves off to life as people through violence, through misunderstanding, through oppression. And that to be able to orient yourself in life with joy is a resistance to that fact that death is all around. It's not a denial of our own mortality or our own death, but it is a resistance to it. To celebrate life and to notice its presence everywhere. Not to spend life thinking of all the joy that we are missing, but to embrace the life and the joy that is already around us. Another way to think about it is, and this is often spoken about in a lot of Buddhist theology, and it says that if you were to think about the way that you feel when you have a headache or a toothache, in that moment when you're experiencing that pain, and it can be all-consuming. Anyone who's ever had a migraine knows just how all-consuming that feeling can be. All you can think about it in that moment is wanting the headache to go away, and how happy you would be if you just didn't have a headache or a toothache or a backache or a footache or whatever. But right now, if you're walking around and you don't have a headache or a toothache or a backache, or maybe some of you have some combination of those things frequently. But if you don't have a splitting migraine or a headache right now, you're probably not sitting here thinking how grateful you are to not have a migraine. You're probably not thinking about it at all. And maybe you're thinking about all the other things that you wish you had or didn't have. Maybe you're not thinking about all of the little gifts of life. I'll give you one other way to think about it. When I started grad school, if I think back, I had to do an assignment one day, which was to take a walk around my neighborhood and just experience all the beautiful things that were there in it. To walk around as if I had never walked around it before. It was sort of like taking a very mindful and intentional walk and noticing little tiny things that I had never noticed before. Like a little detail on the woodwork of a house, a sign in somebody's window, singular leaves clinging to trees, birds, weeds springing up through cracks in the sidewalk. I think back to that moment a lot too. And I also think to how I feel like my daughter, who's a toddler, she's 2 years old, does this all the time. But everything in the world is brand new to her so often, and that what it must be like to live with the joy of a toddler. And how being able to choose what to do, to choose joy and choose life, is a certain orientation to have to things. So for instance, I'm still talking about what it's like to live with a toddler here. If you tell a toddler what to do, they don't want to do it. But if you let them choose to do it themselves, it becomes this incredibly joyful moment. So something as simple as putting laundry away. She loves to help us put napkins away, or like our cleaning rags. And like, it's profuse joy at the idea of being able to put the napkins away, versus if I'm doing it in front of her and not letting her do it, it's like meltdown city. But putting the napkins away because it is a choice that she gets to make and something she gets to do is an incredible gift to her. And so choosing to orient ourselves to the mundane joy is a way of, how can I put this? it's about orienting yourself and choosing to find that. It's about changing life, the task of living, from something that needs to be done to realizing that it is something that we are allowed to do, something that we are given the gift of doing. And to live a life that way, my friends, with such an orientation is the true path, is the true spiritual path. To put intentionality into all of those moments that we have in life. To see that there is magic in each moment. To see that no matter how awful things may seem, there is always joy and pleasure and beauty to be found. I'll leave you with one more story. It's a quick story. There's a famous, it comes from the Buddhist tradition, and it's the story of a person. Let's say in this story, it's a woman who's being chased by a tiger. And she's being chased by a tiger, and in front of her is one path of escape. And it leads to a cliff. And behind her is certain death. And in front of her is the edge of a cliff that she can't see over. And so she takes the only path that she can, which is to run and jump. And as she's in midair, she reaches up and grabs and clings to a branch. As luck would have it, there is a branch available to her. And she's standing there holding on for dear life to this branch. And as she's holding on, she looks up and she sees the tiger above her growling and snarling. And she looks down and she sees that it's actually not that far down, that she could let go and fall and probably get hurt, a little scratched up, maybe even break a bone, but she could probably survive that fall. But lo and behold, as she's holding on for dear life to that branch, she hears the sound of another tiger approaching underneath her. And she's left with two choices in this moment. Really only one choice. And then she notices that there are rodents chewing at the root, at the branch that she is holding on to. And it is minutes away, moments perhaps, from snapping and giving her no choice. And as she sits there in that moment, she contemplates her choices. And then she notices, growing out of the root, next to the root, is a small weed with a familiar looking red fruit sticking out of it. And that fruit was a wild strawberry, a plump, red, delicious, ripe strawberry. And she realizes that she has only one choice in that moment to embrace. And so she reaches over and grabs the strawberry, appreciates its beautiful red ripeness, smells the sweet aroma of the strawberry, plops it into her mouth, savors it, tastes it, opens her eyes, looks at the beautiful sky in that moment, and then life goes on. And of course, you know what happens next. My friends, we all have a similar fate. And we all are presented with a similar choice. To seek and to find and to embrace the beauty that is already here. Not to wait for it, but to seize it and find it where it can be found. We are all going through this life, trying to recognize the joys and the sorrows and the suffering that is all around us. I had a moment, okay, I have one more quick story for you. I had a moment yesterday when I was driving here. I live in Lidditz, I've mentioned this before, and I went on a street that I never went on, and I was waiting at a stoplight, and I was really impatient and trying to get to work. And I looked over, and there was a bench in front of a house to my right, and it said, "Be kind. Everyone you meet has a battle that they are facing." That is what we are trying to do. In this life, we are waiting at a stoplight for the next thing to come. And then we'll continue on to our day, to our struggles, and we will encounter others. And all of us are fighting battles. It's our job to turn towards each other, to turn towards those battles, that suffering, and to remind each other to keep an eye out for that daily beauty, to know that even in the darkest moments, in the most challenging moments, we can reflect back the incredible joy of the everyday. And in that way, the joy of this joyful Sunday of Advent is a reminder to each other, not to wait for the light of the world, but to be the light of the world and to reflect it back on each other, to be the joy in the world, not wait for it. So I'm going to light our Advent wreath for us as a reminder that we need to go out. And even though we know that death awaits, we need to gather the wild fruit that is in our midst. And we need to share it with each other while we still can.
We now take an offering as an outward expression of our interdependence. You can support our work as you are able by texting the amount of your donation to the number on the screen or through the Contribute tab on our website at UUCLonline.org. We share half of our offering this month with Tenfold, a merger of the former Tabor Community Services and the Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership. and which helps all people to achieve equitable housing and financial security.
I am that great and fiery force, sparkling in everything that lives, in shining of the river's course, in greening grass that glory gives. I shine in glitter on the seas, in burning sun, in moon and stars, in unseen wind, in verdant trees. I breathe within both near and far. And where I breathe there is no death, and meadows glow with beauty's rife. I am in all the Spirit's breath, the thundered word, for I am life.
As we close our service, let us remember these words by Darcy Rowe. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There is too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day.
Thank you, Kim, for that beautiful benediction.